Today on Dark Tower, Watts Family Murders. The Watts family murders was a tragic and gruesome event that occurred on Monday, August 13th, 2018 in Frederick, Colorado, USA. The victims of the murders were 34-year-old Shanann Watts, who was 15 weeks pregnant, her two daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, and Shanann's unborn boy, Nico. But how did the Watts family story begin? It was, in fact, a story like many others. Chris Watts had met Shanann in 2010 in North Carolina and fell in love. They married in 2012 and about a year later had their first child, Bella. A year and a half after that, their second girl, Celeste, was born, whom they nicknamed Cece. Fast forward another 3 years to 2018. They now live in a beautiful 5-bedroom home in Frederick, Colorado, living an idealistic life as a happy family, a goal that most people strive for their whole lives. Or so it seemed. Their social media showed a happy family of 4, but all was not what it appeared to be. Shanann had related to her friends that their marriage was in trouble, but Shanann also wanted to give their marriage another chance. She was trusting and loved her children and wanted the family to be complete. In fact, why would she or anyone else not believe the family could heal? Because, you see, Shanann had recently become 15 weeks pregnant with their 3rd child. Chris and her had just recently seen the sonogram. It was a boy, and they named him Nico. But the family story from Chris's perspective was much, much different. For Chris has had an extramarital affair with a co-worker starting in June 2018. He had met Nicole Kessinger at the office place of his job where she worked as a company geologist. He had fallen in love with Nicole. In fact, he wanted a whole new life with her and no one else. August 2018. Shanann had gone to Arizona on a business trip over the weekend and Chris was left home to take care of the children. Driven home by her friend Nicole Atkinson, Shanann returned Monday morning, August 13th at 1:48 a.m. Later on Monday, August 13th, Shanann's friend Nicole Atkinson was to give her a ride to a doctor's appointment, but Shanann was unresponsive to phone calls and texts. Later again, after Shanann missed a business meeting, Nicole Atkinson went to the Watts residence at 12:10 p.m. When the doorbell went unanswered, she called the Frederick Police Department. The police arrived for a welfare check at 1:40 p.m. They investigated and found no signs of forced entry or struggle at the family's home. Shanann and the girls were nowhere to be found. They found Shanann's purse, keys, phone, and then found her wedding ring on the bedside table. Her car with the child seat was still in the garage. Everyone had realized something was wrong. Everyone frantically searched for their whereabouts. Chris gave several news interviews pleading for the safe return of his family. The next day, Tuesday the 14th, the FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined the effort to find the family. Chris had said he had no idea where his family was and had last seen his wife at 5:15 a.m. the previous day when he went to work. The investigators grilled Chris for information regarding their disappearance. He underwent a polygraph test and failed. He continued to say he knew nothing, and all the while never shedding a tear regarding the disappearance of his children and pregnant wife. Then, they brought in Chris's father, Ronnie Watts, to the interrogation room. After a short while emphatically talking to his son, he made a breakthrough. Chris alleged that Shanann was hurting the children, and he had to stop her. So he choked her to death, From here, the investigators had what they needed to further crack open the whole truth. Eventually, he admitted all in regards to the events of that fateful night. So, let us return to that night, Monday the 13th, 1:48 a.m., as recounted by Chris. When Shanann came home, it appeared to her that all was well, with the children and her husband, to such an extent that Shanann and Chris made love that night on their bed. However, later, things take a dark turn. Chris had fallen asleep, and after waking up just hours later, he resolved that now was the time to let her know how he really felt. He told her he didn't love her anymore, and that there was someone else. They started to argue, and Shanann told Chris that he would never see her or the kids ever again. So in a fit of premeditated rage, he got on top of her and started choking her. Immediately after he had choked her to death, Bella, the 4-year-old, walked into the room with her pink blanket. She asked Chris, "What's wrong with Mommy?" Mommy was dead, lying face down on the bed. Chris would wrap Shanann's body in the bedsheet. He then carried her to his truck downstairs and laid her on the back seat floor. He took both of the girls and put them in the back seat with their lifeless mother at their little feet on the floor. They asked Chris, "Is Mommy okay?" His response was, "She'll be fine." Footage shows the very moments he loaded them into the truck. He then drove almost an hour to one of his workplaces, an oil field storage area with large tanks. When he arrived, he proceeded to suffocate the children. He started with Cece, the 3-year-old, with her own blanket. After that, he proceeded with Bella, the 4-year-old. Just before he covered her to take her life away, she said, "Daddy, no." He then took Shanann and buried her in a shallow grave a short distance from the oil tanks. He threw away the blanket he covered her with nearby. He took the lifeless bodies of the children and carried them up to the top of the 20-foot-high oil tanks and hid them inside. So, this is what Chris Watts confessed to on August 15th. The investigators found the bodies, all of which were in an advanced state of decomposition, so much so that Shannon's fetus, Nico, was visible when she was found. Later autopsies revealed that Shanann was being slowly poisoned with OxyContin by Chris in the hopes she would abort the baby. Later on, Chris would reveal that on that fateful night, he had actually attempted to kill the girls earlier before he killed Shanann, but he was unsuccessful. They would revive from their for which he would successfully complete after he took them to the oil field. After he murdered them, he made a series of telling internet searches. He searched luxury hotels, supposedly to spend with his mistress. He searched for realtors in the twisted hope of selling the house. He searched for the children's school and proceeded to unenroll them in an attempt to conceal their disappearance. It was later revealed that he had planned this for several weeks, premeditating all of their first-degree murders. Chris was formally arrested on August 15th. Chris Watts' motive for the murders was reportedly that he was having an affair and wanted to start a new life with his mistress, Nico Kessinger. The prosecution argued that Watts strangled his wife and smothered his daughters before disposing of their bodies in oil tanks at the oil field where he worked. Some questions involving Nico Kessinger's knowledge of Chris's marriage and planning of the murders was not pursued by the prosecution. Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all charges against him, including first-degree murder, and was sentenced to 5 life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole. He is currently at the maximum security prison, Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. The case has been described as one of the most heinous crimes in Colorado's history and has shocked and saddened people across the country.